Well, it was a crazy journey because this was never in any kind of a plan that I had.
We were just scrolling through the TES and I saw a job in Bangkok and my husband said, go for it.
We wanted our kids to have a global experience for education, so that was our driving focus.
We thought we were going for 2 years and 12 years later we've just come back.
Which I think is really characteristic of international teaching, actually. It can take you on amazing journeys.
It was just something that I love to go into.
And when I got there, I realized that there's this whole huge world of international teaching.
International schools are springing up all over the place.
And they engage with all types of music.
Often these international schools want a music program, and actually they want to have the best music program in their area.
We're living in a country which is vibrant with cultural and musical experiences, and there are children who've lived all around the world.
Learning to really adapt, just to let some of your own assumptions go.
The more I've observed globally,
it's not necessarily about the place, it's about the whole experience.
Well, hello, music teachers in international schools community. Welcome to episode 6. Now, first off, a little shout out to those who have sent me a message or two about the podcast so far. I've loved receiving feedback from all over the world about this concept. And last week, I received a comment from Alice, who's teaching music in Madrid. And she wrote to say, just watched episode 2 of your podcast on YouTube. It's really good. Helping to energize me for day 1 back at work tomorrow. Thank you! ! Better add that. So a reminder that if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube, do drop a rating or a review there for me so that I know what kind of things you're resonating with. And thanks so much for those who have already done that. Okay, so today is all about Rockschool. And according to their website, Rockschool music qualifications are tailor-made for the contemporary musician. Ranging from introductory grades to advanced levels of study, RSL Awards graded music exams ensure hard work is rewarded regardless of age or previous musical experience. Kind of like that little opener on their website. Now, to start off with, I came across Rockschool in around 2013 after searching for an alternative option for some of my students who wanted to do graded exams, but their instrument or preferred musical style wasn't part of more traditional examination systems. So I started with some students doing vocal exams through Rockschool, and that worked really well. And from then on, I pretty much had a consistent stream of students doing bass, electric guitar, and drums, and later some chose keyboard and piano exams as well. And eventually I worked with Rockschool to have my school become a registered exam centre, and this really started to make an impact on our contemporary music program. The other part was the Rockschool grouped pieces at grades 3, 5 and 8 were also perfect for curriculum music, especially for GCSE and A-level exam pieces for my students. And the other cool part was that a few of my in-house instrumental teachers participated in the Rockschool Teaching Diploma program, which really helped them to upskill in terms of their approach to pedagogy and teaching practice. So I thought, why not explore this a little further? Today I have 2 guests on the show, and they have set up for the podcast in Penang, Malaysia. We have Rockie Siew, who is the country manager for Rockschool in Malaysia and Brunei. He is an experienced music educator and passionate advocate for the Rockschool concept, and Rockie is currently based in Malaysia. We also have Alistair Platt, and he's the Director of Business Development at RSL Awards. Alistair's been with Rockschool for over 5 years, and among many other things, works on creating links with arts educators around the world, and also leads the global network of Rockschool representatives. So thank you both for being here to share with us today. Let's start with you. How are you doing, Rockie?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Great. And Alistair, how are you?
Yeah, good. A little bit jet lagged. I've only been in this part of the world for a couple of days, but it's great to be back in Southeast Asia after, a couple of years hiatus, right?
Yeah, right. How long has it been since you've been in Asia?
I think, I came over a couple of times in 2019. I think 2020 I didn't make it quite as far over this far east, but yeah, it's been a while and it's good to be back.
Great. Well, thanks again both for being here. And I think I'm going to start with some questions for Rockie. Rockie, can you tell us a bit about how you came to be involved with Rockschool? So tell us a bit about your story, maybe up to the point you're at now.
Okay, I had 2 music centers back in 2000, and I was just a simple musician, just wanted to just earn and just have a low-key life. I had about 300 students, and so things were going well, but I always wanted to teach pop. I'm classically trained, but I love pop. And what I used to do in my teaching would be 7 months with exams, preparing students to sit for the exams, and the next 5 months was just playing pop. I just thought that kids would love to learn pop and see the relevance of music. So when Rockschool came, when I got to know Rockschool about, I think, 2004 or 5, then I got excited. So I wanted to do Rockschool. So at the time, Rockschool was being managed by Trinity in Malaysia. And so I approached Trinity and I asked them to tell me more about it. And what happened was I got roped into to do a bit of Rockschool. And I was asked to do 1 hour a week to promote Rockschool. But I got into it, and I just believed in what was happening, and I knew that was the future. And for me, it was something that I really wanted to do, to promote music through pop music. So at the end, before I knew it, cut the story short, I am now running Rockschool for Malaysia.
So you were originally given 1 hour a week. How quickly did that turn into more hours a week?
Instantly. No, because I teach pop a lot. I would teach them to read lead sheets. I'll try to simplify classical music into lead sheets so that they look at chords rather than looking at notes. Eventually, when you go into high grades, it's all about chords, understanding harmony. So for me, it was just something that I love to go into, and to get an accreditation for it was just marvelous.
So what is your role? What's involved in your role then now as country manager for Rockschool?
As country manager, I'm supposed to promote Rockschool, but eventually I found myself doing more supporting role in helping teachers understand syllabus. Again, a lot of pop musicians, they don't understand syllabus, pop musicians, and they don't read the syllabus. So that's where I come in and try to help them to understand, having a bit of structure. Pop musicians used to be teach what you like, no structure. As long as you like it, we'll learn it and we'll teach it and you play it, kind of thing. But with Rockschool, also what it does help is that it actually sustain learning longer, and each student could go into at least 5 years. So again, my purpose for Rockschool was actually to ensure that there was a stable income for my friends. So it started that way, and I look at it more of I would say a more secure. It brings more security, I would say. Yeah.
And Rockie, what would you say would be the key features of Rockschool?
Key features: music that you enjoy playing. You enjoy playing the type of pieces that you've been hearing every day. You can apply them, and you can do improvisation. You see more relevance in the music that you're playing, and that's nice.
Yeah, nice. And I remember meeting you a few times, but one of them was at, I think it was a conference for international school music teachers. So most of our listenership are international school music teachers. What are some ways that you've connected with international schools over the years?
Well, for international schools, our connection is always based on the curriculum, the after curriculum, I think, the CCA, is that what you call it?
Yeah, like the extracurricular activities.
Right. So that's what we do. So we try to promote that they could do something for the teachers and students want to learn. As I think most of the time we got involved, like with your international school, was those competitions. We got involved with competitions. We do a bit of seminars to help the teachers understand. And again, we always try to encourage them to understand the harmony part. We do that kind of, instead of learning one note at a time, we learn one chord at a time. Yeah.
And Rocky, during the pandemic, I mean, that was a pretty crazy time for all examination bodies. But I was kind of quite impressed with the response from Rockschool. And what was that like for you? Like, what are your memories of the pandemic and what happened for Rockschool during that time in Malaysia?
Oh, it was interesting because before the pandemic started in Malaysia on 18 March, I remember that date because it was my son's birthday. And so before that, I wanted to use technology to communicate with those who are interested, but I couldn't get in touch with them. I wanted to do a lot of webinars already. So when the pandemic hit, it was like a no-brainer. Just quickly switch mode, and that was it. A lot of music teachers were a bit lost. Again, teaching drums online was a headache. There was a lot of challenges, a lot of changes. And all we had to do was always provide information. I think that was the time when everyone just got lost for a moment. And so what I tried to do was just to bring some stability, provide information, and hopefully a bit of calmness.
I think you did that. I remember your communication quite vividly. You were on top of it for sure. Well, that's really cool. Well, I think I might jump over to Alistair there and ask a couple of questions. But thanks for filling us in on your role, and we'll probably come back to you later with a few more questions. But thanks again, Alistair, for joining us, and again for pushing through the jet lag on this one.
No worries.
Now, in your role, I guess, as Director of Business Development, you probably have a pretty good understanding of the overall vision of RSL Awards and Rockschool. Could you just give us a bit of an idea for the listeners? Like, what is Rockschool and what's the overall kind of vision of the organisation in music education?
Yeah, so when we kicked out and started off, we were really trying to validate the learning that was going on in those contemporary instrument spaces that wasn't getting that accreditation and that ability to progress as the classical instruments were. So, I mean, very concretely, our founder was running a summer camp, a rock sort of summer camp down in the Brighton area, and a few buildings along there was a classical one going on, and all the kids in the classical one were getting funded because they had a grade 8, and all the kids that wanted to do the rock one weren't because they didn't have anything to prove what they were doing, and that was a big source of frustration. So Norton York, who started the organisation, he sort of progressed from running those kind of camps to working in universities, writing the first sort of pop music degrees in University of Westminster. And it was really about, offering those opportunities for progression for everything that's going on in the contemporary space. These days, we've developed a lot further than that, and it's much more than just music, it's much more than just contemporary music. We have classical syllabuses as well, but we also do things like dance, musical theatre, and even digital media kind of spaces, all of this creative output, and we're really a specialist awarding body in that space. And what we want to do now is be a benchmark. So I'm really, we try to be as academically rigorous as possible. I'm not in support, we are not in support of any kind of race to the bottom in terms of standards. And what we want to do is then provide as much support for teachers and as much inspiration and great engaging materials for learners to really make that journey as fulfilling as it can be.
So how would you've kind of touched on it a bit already, but what would you say is the kind of difference? Like, what is different about Rockschool compared to some of the more traditional examination bodies that many of us would know about?
Yeah, I think in terms of the contemporary space, it's always about playing in that band scenario. So it's always about playing with backing tracks. And when you just highlight the assessment for a second, you don't need your teacher to come in and accompany you for the examination. You play with a studio quality backing track, same way as you practice, and with all the new materials and new kind of resources that we have, you can do that digitally at home. So you can launch from your own laptop a studio quality backing track to play along to and practice to. But I mentioned briefly, we've launched some classical syllabuses, and this might be a good expression of what we think is a little bit different, but and what we're trying to prove or trying to achieve is, we've launched a classical piano and violin syllabus and a guitar one coming out later this month. And our approach is to produce a set of repertoire that's a little bit more inclusive than maybe some of the other boards have used in the past. So this isn't to disrespect anything from the Western classical tradition, and there's certainly, you know, a decent spread of pieces from that kind of genre and that canon. But we also want to include what we would think of as sort of modern classical music. So some of the stuff that is written by composers who are still alive as a starting point, and then, you know, things that have been used in, say, films and video games and these kinds of things that are, once again, potentially more accessible and more engaging to younger learners as they're getting started. Jazz needs to be covered off. And then when we come to things like guitar, we're covering off Latin American kind of guitar tradition as well. And from talking to teachers, as we moved into that space, there was a clear demand to not let the pop side of things drop away either. So we've included a couple of more pop tracks in each of the grades, which is a nice balance. And I think we need to almost stop thinking about contemporary piano, classical piano, and just think piano. And so our approach is always put all the resources that you need into one publication, all of the genres, all of the feels, play what you like for examinations. We've always had a capacity to take people's free choice pieces for the majority of the pieces that they're playing for an assessment as well. So learners can even compose their own stuff, but choose what they like. If you're playing and learning what you like to listen to, you're more likely to be inspired and more likely to want to continue.
So it sort of almost sounds like, you know, the name we're using, Rockschool, that's diversified massively.
Yeah, so absolutely. So the company started off called Rockschool, and when we started moving in first into the sort of musical theatre and dance areas, it didn't seem very appropriate to associate the words rock school with something that was, say, modern dance. So we created a kind of, it's the same company, but we created an umbrella brand called RSL Awards Limited, and then these different bits can operate kind of separately underneath that. But it's one company.
Yeah, and I guess for listeners, you probably heard me referring to Rockschool and then RSL Awards, and that just really clears that up. That's where the connection lies. So that's really useful. So thanks for covering that. And I guess if you visit the RSL Awards website, you will kind of see what you've just explained, right? Yeah. I mentioned earlier in the introduction how Rockschool, RSL Awards resources really helped my instrumental teachers. And I know our listeners will really kind of resonate with this because it's something that's come up in our community quite a bit, that we often have instrumental tutors that come on in to our school. They're fantastic musicians, but maybe they haven't had that much training in terms of pedagogy, approach to teaching. And I found this Rockschool diploma, RSL Awards diploma, you'll have to correct me on what the actual title is there, to be really useful. Can you tell us a bit more, and our listeners a bit more, about the diploma?
We have some professional diplomas. We call them professional diplomas. These qualifications sit at level 4 and level 6, i.e. first year of undergrad or final year of undergraduate study. So those are the levels of them, although they're smaller qualifications than themselves. There are 3 pathways through them. One is a performance pathway, which is where you would go as a youngster, having finished your grade 8 and you're looking to develop those performance skills further, even though remembering that they are university level studies. So if you're 14, you're likely to find some of the analysis and things like that you need to bring to those qualifications fairly complicated. There's a creative enterprise pathway, which is more for people who collaborate, who are not performers but are collaborators in some kind of creative production. So you might be the sound engineer in a show or something, and you can still go on and do a professional diploma. And then the teaching arm that we need to focus on here. So this is really it's a 4-unit qualification with 3 core units, and then you can choose an optional unit at the end. And these are self-study qualifications where you reference your own teaching practice. So they're not for people who haven't started teaching, and you need to evidence your teaching practice, so with little video clips and so on. And really it's about, understanding learning, it's about planning learning, and about benchmarking and progression and that evolution of learning. And then, as I say, after that you're really getting into your free choice areas, if you like. So you can focus in on things like SEND, or you can focus in on safeguarding, or whatever it is, the sorts of areas. But what it does, I think, is it forces the teacher to sort of self-evaluate quite a lot and critically analyze what they're up to and how they use the facilities that they have, their skills and knowledge base, and the resources that they have to make that learning experience as effective as it can be.
This could be a really nice framework for, I'm just thinking of a head of music, for example, or a head of department, and they want their instrumental teachers to think about professional development. And this seems like a fantastic framework that covers a lot.
Yeah, it is. And it's quite free in a way, because you apply it to your own teaching practice. So it doesn't make a difference if you're a piano teacher, or actually, frankly, you could be a drama teacher. You can still apply the same units to those bits. So yeah, it gives, and it's relatively small as a qualification. It's a 40 credit qualification, which shouldn't take any longer than 400 hours to do total from start to finish. That's all your preparation time, all your recording time, all of the the class time that you do. So it's something that's easily achievable on a sort of self-study basis within a 12-month or an academic year, say.
And I might just throw a question over to Rockie here, if that's okay. Rockie, I know we've chatted a little bit about some teachers in Malaysia and Brunei who have done this work. How has that been for you, and what sort of support have you managed to give some of these teachers who are working on this qualification?
Well, I've been doing this for the past 3 years. Well, I think since 2010. And the result is always that the teachers come back more confident. I think the word stronger is a better word, because they feel that instead of just being skill-based, they are able to think for themselves. Like they are now always thinking about what they're doing, analyzing. And the topics that I cover was more on behavior, understanding personality, understanding different approaches, very much from the performance, professional diplomas, those units. But I break it down in smaller parts, and we look into that. We look into teaching scenarios. Then again, most of the teachers are Asian, so they are afraid to speak out, and you've got to prod them, you've got to encourage them. So that in itself is a learning experience and a big transformation in their lives.
Fantastic.
If I may just quickly add there, the challenge of the learning at level 4 and level 6 is to think of it as university level study. So there's a lot of critical analysis to be done, and there's quite a bit of research to be done as well. So I do it like this, but this person recommends doing it more like this, and that kind of evaluation of why and what's working for me, what's not working for me, where can I improve. That's the kind of understanding that the teacher needs to come out with and in a way evidence in what they submit to us. It's all a self-submission online, so you can capture this evidence in lots of different ways. You can do written stuff, you can do vlogs, you can, you can do a PowerPoint, you can do anything you like. And there are guidelines around all of that, but you're trying to demonstrate certain outcomes of learning by assessment criteria, and all of these are just clearly stipulated in a syllabus document. So you know what you've got to show. How you go about doing that is your way of doing it.
Super flexible. I like that. And I'm just thinking different scenarios, different schools with in-house teachers that are contracted from an external company. There's so many ways that you could then apply the sections of these courses, or different, exactly like you said, different approaches for delivery. So that's both fascinating, because I haven't really heard of that before, that idea of such flexibility in I guess achieving the accreditation and evidence in the accreditation, but also very accessible.
I think one last point to mention on that is we're seeing more and more senior teachers sort of mentoring junior teachers a little bit in that direction, which is great, because this is about passing on best practice, and really gives you a sort of school-led path to professional development, rather than just sort of almost throwing the hospital pass in the rugby parlance and saying, all right, go on, get on with it.
Okay, so let's switch gear a little bit. Still obviously in the RSL world, but we spoke briefly, I think both of you, prior to the recording, about this new idea, this RSL learning platform concept. And I've seen it advertised a little bit on some of the social media things and whatnot. But maybe, I'm not sure who wants to take it. Maybe Alistair, you want to tell us a little bit more about what is the RSL learning platform and how can teachers use it?
Yeah, sure. We're really proud of this. This is one of our innovations and developments throughout the pandemic. Blood, sweat and tears, believe me, went into this. What we wanted to do is keep evolving the materials that support the learning and support the teachers. So the first step from moving from a paper book with the digital downloadable audio was then to produce a digital version of that book. So we did a PDF version of that book. So that made it, usable on tablets, PCs, whatever. And then we created a digital sheet music player in partnership with an organization called Music Gurus. And that has the repertoire in it. So you buy a book's worth of repertoire and you have a sheet music player that aligns all the backing tracks to the sheet music. There's a cursor that moves through the sheet music as you're playing it, and you can do all these funky things like loop sections, slow things down, change, all sorts of stuff. And then, so the next evolution on from that was to think, well, what else needs to be in there? Well, there's more in the book than there is in just repertoire. So we wanted to digitize everything that is, all the technical exercises and the example unseen tests, like the improvisation test, the listening test, and all these kinds of stuff. So we've managed to do that in a learning platform, which is a subscription-based platform. And actually, we've done it across the entire portfolio. So everything is in there. So all of the syllabuses, the repertoire extension books, and so this is excellent as a teaching resource, because now instead of having one student with one book, you've now got everything. So you can start to show similarities in other instruments. You can start widening that student's musical compass, if you like, and world. You can, particularly if you're thinking about things like guitars, challenge an acoustic guitar student with a ukulele track, or maybe electric to acoustic, or and classical guitar will join in that platform as soon as it's finalized and out. So you have that digital sheet music player functionality again. All this idea of slow it down, mark the sections, change. You can even change the pitch and this kind of stuff. So you can have a real play with the content. You've got the technical exercises with all the backing tracks to that within the platform as well. And then on top of that, and probably the most important innovation, is that you can connect a teacher account to a student account. So what that means is that the teacher then can set an exercise for the student to go away and practice with, right? And this then allows you to build up a bank of exercises and a bank of tasks that will allow you to use graded music in a much more group environment. So you can do demonstration of a certain technique or a certain whatever it might be that you're focusing in on, but then know that you've got your 5 learners over here that are a bit ahead of the rest of the class. So we'll set them a task that's a little bit more complicated than the main batch, and maybe there's a few a little bit trailing behind, and you can tweak that learning, differentiate that learning for a more group kind of scenario. The student then receives via their login the exercise to do with all sorts of parameters. You can set it that they have to memorize it, or they do it as sight reading, or whatever it is. You give them the number of attempts, and then the student can practice, and then they do their recording. And when they do their recording, the first thing they get is a bit of feedback from the platform itself. So with the exception of drums, we can do accuracy to notation scores, which is really nice, and it even gives feedback about which notes were held too long, where there wasn't enough of a pause, or whatever it is. It gives you kind of that detailed feedback. So this kind of gamifies music learning a little bit. So you can set a goal score, right? You need to get 90% on this piece in 5 attempts. There are even algorithms about how harsh you want the machine to treat everything. But once the student's done it, they submit it, one click submit back to the teacher, who can then give them feedback, written feedback in a sort of comment section, if you like. And then you can carry on building up your teaching practice, if you like, or your structure and your scheme of work for the term, or whatever it is, with this sort of stuff. And you don't have to be just limited to what's in our materials. So you can upload your own exercises, whether they be audio-only exercises or using MuseXML. You can put your own sheet music in it. I do little caveat here: copyright issues are then your problem, not mine. I've covered my side of copyright issues, but you can really build up a bank of stuff there, and makes you very efficient. And as a teacher, you can manage hundreds of students worth of interaction in there very, very, very quickly. So access to everything, and then the ability to show students, kind of where they're going. And how great is it to show them a grade 5 piece when they're in grade 2? You'll be there in 2 years, and look, you can see the grade 2 skills here showing themselves in the grade 5 piece. This is why we're doing these. This is why we're progressing. That's going to morph in this direction, and it really just kind of wraps the whole thing up very nicely, we feel.
This sounds incredible. So let me just get this straight. Subscription. So a teacher, or I'm guessing a school, just kind of jump in later on this. A school or a teacher has a subscription to the platform. They get everything in that subscription, and obviously we can find out prices and things for that. The student also has a subscription?
No. So the way it works is 2 levels. One, it can be done on an independent level, where a student subscribes, and a teacher gets free access to this and connects to the student. The only thing the teacher needs to do is to create a teacher registry profile, which takes 15 minutes, no cost attached to it, on our website. Then the student can search for that teacher and connect to them. Because I can't have it the other way around, otherwise it'd be a little bit like the Wild West, with the teachers all trying to grab all the students that are subscribing to the platform. So I had to be a bit careful with that. Yeah. So teacher gets it for free as long as they've got one student paying a monthly or a yearly subscription, and the student has access to all the materials as well.
Yeah,
I actually have been requested to make a slimmer version, so to concentrate a student's access into one instrument or even one grade book, and we may very well do that, but we haven't started the work on that yet. So at the moment, you get access to everything. Model number 2 is I can sell to an institution an institutional management of this. And what you do there is you pay for the number of seats you want, and the number of seats is the number of connections between students and teachers. So you could have 500 students, 20 teachers in the system, and maybe you're using the platform for one term with the first 150 of them, so you need 150 seats at that point, right? And then maybe you're moving groups and you're doing something else, and then you switch them all out, and it's very just click and connect.
Yeah.
Really, really easy stuff.
That's cool. That's some really nice, two really nice models, and I can see how they could both be used, equally successfully by schools. And I think the idea of seats and that kind of concept is quite familiar, because we have, as music teachers, we often have this kind of subscription service with other platforms. So that's really nice too. It's kind of common, or at least recognized language. Okay, well that's fantastic. I'd looked a little bit into this, but you've just kind of blown my mind, because I'm now thinking of all sorts of things about how that could be super beneficial for a school to have all, like, I used to buy all the Rockschool books. Still do at times, but you buy individual books, and you've got to have the stock there, and you've got to make sure it's ready. But now I'm just thinking, well, if I can just have a subscription with everything, that sounds pretty appealing.
Yeah, and we've always, at Rockschool, always wanted to have each student to have their own materials, which is why we request that a student has their own copy of the book to be in an exam. But obviously this is having access to the materials. So if you're part of a subscription, there's no need to have a paper copy or anything like that of the materials as well. So, the costs in two different places, right? It's bucket money, really. Which bucket do you put it in?
I guess for a teacher, though, it's also just the practicality of space, and like having to buy all the books and store them somewhere and keep them up to date and all that kind of admin, where you can just save a lot of time and energy on that, and have the subscription and move names around within a system. That sounds pretty ideal. I guess we'll have something in the show notes for sure about this, the RSL Learning Platform. We can link into the show notes, people can explore, and we'll probably come back to some connections with you guys, like how best, for people to connect with you. But let's just keep talking about a couple more things that I wanted to bring up. As an international school music teacher, if I'm interested in the Rockschool stuff, the RSL Awards stuff, and I want some support on the ground with someone like Rockie, how can I connect with a regional or country manager?
Yeah, good question. And hopefully people will still be listening to this in the future. So I will caveat this with, by the beginning of the new year, sort of February time, we're going to have an upgrade to our website. So the navigation to this might be slightly different at that point. However, if you go to on the homepage, there's a choose your country drop-down list. And we have about 45 partners like Rockie in different parts of the world. All of their contact details are listed directly there. And then there's a kind of generic email box, which is monitored daily by my team. And if it's not, they're in all sorts of trouble, which is just international at rslawards.com. So you'll get quick responses either locally or centrally via those two channels.
Yeah. And if someone wanted to, is the examination center thing still a thing? And if someone wanted to become an examination center, how would they go about that?
So let me address that as a wider thing, so rather than specific to Malaysia. We have generally the idea and the ethos of taking the examiners to where the students learn. So what we try to do is curate a tour where a travelling examiner will come in and then travel around to all the different schools, and effectively within a few sort of parameters about how far we need to go to get to that particular school. If you've got roughly a day's worth of candidates, the likelihood is, as long as there are enough from the whole region to warrant sending the examiner out and not doing just the digital formats of the exams, which we should probably come to a little bit later too, we will be able to get to you for a day's worth of examinations. And a day's worth of exams can be as small, especially if they're higher grades, can be as small as a dozen exams. Anywhere sort of from maybe even as low as 10 to about 20 exams is a full day of examination. So the way of doing it, we would, in the UK context, we'd refer to that as a private day. That's the way we normally do our exams internationally. So nearly all of them are done like that. And when we don't have a day's worth of exams, there are the digital options, or it's the job of the likes of Rockie to then amalgamate two schools that are next door to each other and so on. And it's that knowledge of on the ground knowledge, which is much better to do with local partners than try and do it from a distance.
So let's talk about those different exam formats, because we haven't gone there yet. What options are available for students who want to take these exams at the moment?
Lots is the answer, I think much of the communication that you heard from Rockie in the early weeks of the lockdowns around the pandemic were around these launches. It was another big piece of work to move as quickly as we managed to move. So it was 3 weeks into the UK lockdown that we came out with a recorded digital version of the assessments. We were somewhat lucky and somewhat probably prompted by events in China, which is a very important market for us, in late 2019, to get moving on this before lockdowns hit, because we would never have done it from start to finish in 3 weeks. But so we have a recorded digital option where a learner can, from the place of their choice, record their examination and upload it for grading. They get the normal mark sheets and they get a little kind of video, self-filmed, cell phone video feedback from the examiner, because we still want that to be a personal experience between the learner and the assessor there.
That's really cool.
It's nice. It's a nice innovation. People are very proud of what they're hearing there. And do you know what? It's quite interesting, because it allows the examiner actually to be maybe a little bit more formative in the comments, compared with the old written mark sheets, which were very much more about, well, you missed this in that piece, or you lost your sync, or it can be a little bit more holistic on the whole exam, because you've already got that digital mark sheet. So that's one version. We did have to tweak the qualification for that, though, and now, having done tens of thousands of these, we're very comfortable with them and can statistically back it up that it's the same level of assessment as the older, more traditional versions. So we'll keep these ad infinitum, or at least that's what it looks like at the moment. And this is what we call a graded certificate. So here, in a traditional graded music exam, you have repertoire playing, you have technical exercises, and then you have unseen tests. The challenge in that, when you're doing something that you record from your school or from home at any point, is how do I give you the unseen question? So I can't, is the answer.
Yeah.
There are potentially some solutions on the horizon about randomizing these kinds of things, but not very easy to do. So instead of the unseen tests, we asked for a wider selection of the technical exercises to counterbalance the amount of learning and effort. So that's the asynchronous version. Oh, I should mention that traditionally we've always had two types of exam. The graded music exam, which is repertoire, technical exercises and unseen tests, and a performance certificate version, which is the 5 pieces and no technical exercises, no unseen tests. Obviously you can do that performance certificate version in an asynchronous offline recorded way. Then we did effectively a Zoom version of a live digital exam, a live face-to-face exam, where the examiner beams in to the music centre and interacts with the student over effectively a Zoom meeting, and we have a little server that the examiner can kick off all the backing tracks to, and so it's very much like the interaction that you would have in a face-to-face environment. And I'm pleased to say that we are back out examining pretty much everywhere in the world in a face-to-face environment, with the exception of China, that's still undergoing some lockdowns and travel restrictions. Just last month, we had one of our examiners, Viv Locke, over here doing a tour in Malaysia, and we anticipate this autumn season, so the end of 2022, to be very much back into a face-to-face zone. I'm sure many students and many music centres will prefer to remain in those digital spaces, so if that's what they choose, there's no pressure in either direction, but we're very pleased, and the examiners, most of all, are very pleased to be back out and about.
Great, thanks for that outline. So 3 options: asynchronous, record yourself, upload, get your little piece of feedback as well, which I really like. Live online, which is nice. I hadn't really heard about that option. So the kind of Zoom interaction as if you were almost face-to-face. And now, as you said, the live in-person. So 3 really flexible, nice options there. Okay. I'm not sure if you guys have anything that we haven't covered that you wanted to share with our community. Was there anything there that you thought, oh, there's one more thing I wanted to add that people should know about RSL Awards and Rockschool?
I think what I would encourage you to do, and I don't think we should spend too long in this particular forum going into the details, but I'd encourage you to look at everything that RSL Awards has to offer. Right next to you as the music teacher in your international school, you've got a performing arts teacher who's sitting next door to you. And go and have a look at what we can offer in those spaces. There are graded options across dance, musical theatre, acting, even acting for screen. There are graded options in digital media, vlogging, podcasting. There are other areas like contemporary music theory, there's music production, all of these kind of digital audio workstation kind of skills. They underpin many of these different areas, certainly all those digital media things. So there's a lot to understand there for what is in the graded space. And most of them have all that flexibility that we've just been talking about for graded music too. So hopefully they can fit into your context quite nicely. The other thing I would point out is we've had a really wonderful time with cohort and classroom based qualifications in recent times, and this is what we call our vocational qualifications. So these are at level 1, 2 and 3. So we're broadly in a GCSE and A level kind of space there. And we have lots of different qualification sizes, thousands of options to choose between. There are 200 units at level 3 to choose between in the performing arts space. If you've ever seen, I always hate referring to this because this is what the government and things like that in the UK do. They call them BTECs. But if you are familiar with anything that looks like a BTEC or an OCR technical or anything like that, it's our version of that, coming from that specialist creative arts awarding space. We've got some really lovely stories of international schools taking on these qualifications and really changing the dynamic of the creative departments. We've got a couple over in Southeast Asia that are kicking off this year with it. Some tried and tested stories as well. So please do get in touch if you're interested in exploring those kinds of things. I think that the overall message is the approach is really a plan, do, review kind of approach to whatever projects it is that you have going on or you aspire to having going on within your institution. And the content-wise can be quite open. You can do a performance unit at level 3 for a 3-chord punk rock concert, but you can also do it for a piano concerto. So it really is very flexible to what you're trying to achieve. Carries loads of UCAS points. The largest size of qualification at level 3 carries the same UCAS points as 3 full A levels. So there's all sorts of options. You can do big, small, whatever level it is. Really loads of options, and we'd love to talk anybody through it who would like to get in touch. And again, International at RSL Awards is the place to come and find us.
Rockie, what's ahead for you with RSL Awards for this year? What are you looking forward to? What's on your agenda?
We're planning to do more workshops for piano teachers, especially those who are with a classical background. They want to know how to move towards teaching pop. So I'll be running a few workshops, basically just to teach them and encourage the teachers that they know how to teach. It's just that there's the element of confidence there, trying to connect what they have learned, like harmony, and how to move it into a lead sheet. I think everyone wants to learn how to play a lead sheet, so hopefully we'll get there.
And Alistair, what about for you? What's ahead for RSL Awards?
Many things. Many things. We have the classical guitar syllabus launch coming up in a couple of weeks. I'll follow that up with some more group kind of performance assessment opportunities, which are less virtuosity based and more communication based, and allow for group performances, as the name suggests. So that gives us some different scope, particularly for those that focus the learning around kind of band culture or group culture. And then in the performing arts space, I've got a public speaking syllabus, which is going to be really cool, with some nice new innovations in there as well. So, lots, and RSL is really on the move. We're developing all over the place. We know the pipeline of the next 4 or 5 things to come out the door. So the groundwork's already going in, and it's going to remain a busy time.
Sounds like a exciting time for you guys and for music teachers around the world, because it sounds like lots of great things that'll serve the community, solve some problems, of course. Like, that's, I guess, the main thing. There's so many little problems that are being solved by some of the products and ideas and services that you guys have going. So I'm excited. Sounds really good. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know it's been quite a busy, well, it is a busy week ahead for you, but it already has been busy. And like you said, Alistair, you're fighting the jet lag as well. And Rocky, it sounds like you've got, lots of teachers you're working with and lots of schools that need your help. And really exciting stuff. Thank you so much for taking the time. As we've heard, I think the best place to go to is, I was just Googling it before, RSL Awards pops up, website there, and go to the, was it country locator, find your country?
Choose your country, it's labeled
Choose your country.
at the moment.
Choose your country, and that's where you'll find your country manager or regional representative. And then, I've seen Rockschool all over different social media platforms too. So is there a best place to look out for what's happening with RSL Awards, or have I just kind of covered it?
I think on the social channels, we particularly cover off Insta and Facebook and Twitter, are probably the ones we're most active on. So if you're following us on any of those, you should be kept up to speed. I would caution just a little bit that sometimes it's a bit UK centric, what's going out on there, but the main news and everything is going on. Most of our international partners like Rocky run their own channels as well, so they're easy enough to find normally Rockschool Malaysia or Rockschool Asia, and in fact in his case. So there's local channels as well. We're everywhere. We hope you can see us, really.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a great rest of the week, and again, really appreciate you joining me today.
Thanks, Chris.
Pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Music Teachers in International Schools podcast. Listen to other episodes by visiting mtiis.com, or learn more about our community on Facebook by simply searching for Music Teachers in International Schools. If you know someone who you think I should get on the podcast, I'd love to hear from you. You can find me at chriskoelma.com, ChrisKoelma.com. See you next time.